Train the muscles, not the joints. So welcome back to another Q&A Friday with Natural Gallant Bodybuilding. And today I'm going to answer, a bunch of the questions that were given to me all week. So I'm going to be scrolling through this stuff and who knows, right? One of your questions might be answered. So, stay tuned. Don't scroll through the whole thing because you might learn something, because I like to ramble about certain subjects. So we'll see what comes up today. So first of all, I'm going to start with a guy named Philip. Philip Caratas, or Caratas. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. I'm always saying the names wrong. But anyway, he asked if I'm going to be competing again in the future. And the thing is, that is a possibility. I don't know for sure, but I do have the urge to get on stage just to entertain, to have fun doing that. And I'm just kind of experimenting with my body and seeing, how it responds to diet and, what basically I can look like. Because a lot of times people, and I've seen people do this a lot of times, they get lean in the gym and they think that gym lean is competition lean, and then they go on stage and they just get absolutely totally annihilated. And this happened to a guy at the gym who's a little cocky, but anyway, and he knows it. And he basically went on a show, and I told him, I said, listen, you're lean, you look great, but you don't look competition lean. So if you want to go in a competition and win, you got to be a lot leaner, at least a couple more % leaner. And he kind of looked at me like I was an idiot, and I didn't know what I was talking about. And of course, he placed last in his division. So the fact is that I am not delusional as far as how lean I need to be on stage. I've lost and won enough shows to understand that. So basically, I'm learning to what my body responds to now. And so that way I can basically really hone a diet in if I do decide to compete. And second of all, I don't even know what federation I could compete with, because I've won the local BCA BBA show, which is the IFBB affiliate. I've won the local show and the provincial show, which is state. If you guys are in the States, provincial, same thing. And I don't know if they'll let me compete again, because I won the overall at that show in 2002. So I want to do something local, because I don't want to travel anywhere. I don't want to go through that whole, huge inconvenience of packing food on a plane and paying for a hotel. No thanks, right? I'm not interested in that. But I would like to do something just to get on stage just for fun, right? So yeah, so am I going to compete? You never know. We'll see how my body responds. If it starts to look good and I feel that it looks balanced and I'm not going to embarrass myself and I actually will look good on stage, and that's competition lean, right? Like I said, it's different. Then yeah, maybe I'll give it a go. So what 9+10 asks, he says, what do I think about resistance bands? Are they good for gaining muscle? And, you see a lot of people using resistance bands along with weight training to change the torque curves of the weight. So basically what they'll do is they'll put resistance bands on there with some plates and stuff. And first of all, it causes this bounciness. So it helps nervous system training. So it helps you train your nervous system a little bit, because it creates imbalance. It can be dangerous if it's done too extreme, of course. But resistance bands can also be used just by themselves, just for stretching and doing rotator cuff exercises or, bicep exercises. There's really no reason why you couldn't gain some muscle from this if the resistance was hard enough, okay? It is good to confuse the muscle with what type of resistance you give to it. Because with gravity, like I've talked about in one of my other videos, with gravity, when you curl a dumbbell, the resistance is hard at the bottom and in the middle, but then at the very top maybe not so much, or vice versa. Gravity has a different torque curve than, say, an elastic band. Now with an elastic band, it doesn't matter what range of motion you're using. You can change the resistance from any angle. You can have it from the ceiling, from the side, and therefore from doing that, it's kind of a lot like cables. You can actually have tension coming from angles that you probably wouldn't get under normal circumstances in the gym. The other thing is that they get progressively harder as you get to the squeeze part of the muscle. So this confuses the muscle and gives it a different type of tension to adapt to. So I think resistance bands could be good to incorporate in your training. Would it be good for the entire thing? Well, I don't know. That's kind of the basis of the Bowflex. The Bowflex came out years and years ago, and it had nothing but resistance bands used, and elastic type bands, and this elastic energy basically for weight or for resistance to work your muscles. I find that the only problem with that type of resistance on the Bowflex is that when you're at the bottom part of the portion, it gets so much easier than at the top. And although the bottom part of the rep is the most dangerous part, it is also the part of the rep where you can get the most results if done safely. And what I mean by bottom is your bottom, okay? So before we get into the range of motion type debate here, the bottom of the range of motion for your body type, okay? So say you're only coming down halfway, but the resistance is only 25% at halfway, you can see how that would take a lot of tension off the muscle at that point, where weights don't really do that, okay? So anyway, yeah, resistance bands, maybe they will help to be another tool in your toolbox for training, and I think that there can be some validity to training with them. And yeah, just try it out. That's all I can say, right? But would I replace free weights with them? Probably not. I would never replace free weights with an elastic band, okay? I haven't anyway yet. I mean, because weights just seem to work well enough. So, okay, the genetic beast lobster is asking about bench press technique, and he's saying he leads with his elbows, you know? So basically he's doing a powerlifting technique where he keeps his elbows at his side, chest out, you know, back, and I'm assuming he's talking about a powerlifting technique. Now, it's really important for people to understand that when you're lifting weights for powerlifting as opposed to bodybuilding, it's two totally different goals. Now, do you get stronger as a bodybuilder? Yes, you do. Do you get stronger as a powerlifter? Yes, you do. But powerlifting is about measuring that strength, even if you have to cheat the weight up a little bit by changing the torque curve or changing the angle, right? So say a bodybuilder bench straight up and down just to hit the chest or whatever muscle group he wants. A powerlifter will push the weight towards the eyes in order to basically be able to cheat that weight up a little bit. Now, are they strong? Yes, they are. They're strong to do that, but their first goal is to get the weight up. No matter what, no matter how, as long as it conforms to the rules of powerlifting, getting the weight up is the most important thing. Doesn't matter if they're all over the place, they're shaking, you know, as long as they're within the rules, then it counts as a lift, okay? So, and of course some judges are more strict on this than others, but again, another discussion. But the bottom line is, when you're lifting weight, okay, you have to decide, are you a bodybuilder or are you a powerlifter, okay? And if you're a powerlifter, understand that when you're lifting more weight than a bodybuilder, it doesn't mean that you're actually stronger. It just means that you found the most efficient way to lift that weight. But it doesn't mean your muscles, the tension that is traveling through your muscles is more. You see? Because a lot of it is coordination. It's about, can you coordinate those muscles to get that perfect lift for that type of exercise? I've seen a lot of powerlifters and a lot of people that are very strong in the gym, but you take them to a construction site, they're weak as hell because they haven't performed the groove there, you see? So with bodybuilding, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get strong on all different angles. You're not just trying to find the efficient angle, you're trying to get strong on all the angles safely, you know, the angles that are safe for your joints. So a lot of people get wrapped up in how much weight they're lifting. They, you know, this guy basically said, what's his name, Lobster, okay? The genetic beast Lobster said that he lost some weight and that might be why he lost a rep on his bench and everything. Well, that's normal, right? Because when you're bench pressing, if you're fatter, if you have more weight, then the weight doesn't move your body, and that's less energy your muscles have to come up with in order to stabilize the weight. But does it mean that you're stronger or weaker? You know, you lose 20 pounds and now you got to stabilize more, and say you get the same reps, guess what? You're actually stronger. You're actually stronger. It's just that you don't have the body weight, okay? And the body weight was keeping you from moving around, so therefore you were able to lift more weight, you see? So that's why it's important not to get too wrapped up in numbers sometimes, because what's going on with your body and your body fat and your water retention, all this kind of stuff can lead you to a little bit more stability so that you can push more weight, but it doesn't mean that your muscles actually got stronger. I noticed that I made a lot more gains off season in bodybuilding when I started treating my off season as a semi-in season. And what I mean by that is that I stayed leaner, because then I wasn't relying on just body fat to move the weights around. I was actually really connecting to the muscles and really focusing on them, and they had to do the entire job. And I know a few other bodybuilders that did the same thing, and they noticed that their results went up. They started to eat efficiently for building muscle, not for ego as far as how much weight did I lift in the mirror today, you know? So they started to gauge their workouts based on how well their muscles felt, how pumped they felt, how they recovered. And if they were getting up more weight or less weight, they weren't quite as concerned about that. Of course, they tried to progressively get stronger. Yes, that's part of gaining muscle, but getting stronger at a certain body fat percentage is what's important, not just getting stronger, all right? Otherwise, I just go to 300 pounds just to eat Doritos and everything in sight all the time. And then, yeah, I'd probably be able to bench press a lot more weight than I can now. But will I look like a bodybuilder? Will I be able to build muscle mass overall? Will that be healthy for me? And will I actually be able to ever get on stage at 300 pounds? You know, so this is the thing. So you have to be a realist about this, okay? So don't worry so much if your weight goes down. So the bottom line is, what I'm talking about when it comes down to should you bench press leading with the shoulders or the chest, depends on your goal, first of all. Second of all, it also depends on what is efficient movement for you. Right? Now, what's efficient movement for you is the movement that doesn't hurt your joints first and foremost, okay? That's the first thing. I want you to move the way that your body asks you to move, and move in a way that is comfortable on your joints. That's first priority. Second of all, we can decide whether you're a powerlifter or a bodybuilder, and then from there, you know, you can just train that way. So if you're trying to build a bigger chest, I would just say, are you getting a bigger chest? You've gotten stronger. Are you getting a bigger chest? Is that happening? And if you want a bigger chest, if it's not happening, then you have to change your technique or change your exercise and go from there. But it all depends on goals. It just depends on your goals, right? So pick or dinner. Hey, this is going to be a tradition, I think, with you on here. So you're asking why my eyes travel with the bar when I do lat pull downs and stuff. I actually enjoy it. I don't know why, I just enjoy it. It helps you connect as it's almost like as the motion's going, I just like to connect with it. It feels easier on my neck too, because I think because of the shoulder instability from the hockey injury, you know, my neck tries to stabilize the shoulder area a bit. So that affects how my upper back functions, how my lats function, how everything in that area functions. So sometimes I get a little bit more neck movement because of that. But do you have to do it that way? No. You know, if you could be totally stable, that's probably more ideal actually, but it just feels right to me based on my injury history and based on how my body moves. But like I said, you have to go on feel on this, right? So that's why I feel like it's right for me, but it's not necessarily right for other people. It's just the way my body moves at this time. And it's based on sometimes muscle knots or trigger points or whatever in the area from doing a lot of training, right? So, and the injuries from hockey. So Jim Dano's asking a question. Basically, he's saying, thanks for the information, and say if you plan to do roughly 3 sets per exercise and you go into your workout and you realize you have a lot more energy, would you continue? Would you change it up depending on how you feel that day? Because it's, he commented on the video about going from bodybuilding to awareness building. And the thing is that yes, I would or wouldn't, depending on what my history is too, okay? So what I mean by this is that, say I know when I do 9 sets for something or 6 sets, I get a certain amount of soreness, so that I cannot keep my frequency of training like 2 days from now, whatever it is. Like say I'm doing a 2-day split and I'm training each body part 3 days a week, okay? And I know that when I do 6 sets, I get a certain amount of soreness, and when I do 9 sets, I get another certain amount of soreness, and when I do 20 sets, I get another certain amount of soreness and fatigue. My first priority is keeping the frequency, because I find the frequency seems to work the best for me, but that doesn't mean it's the only way. And also I do change the set sometimes. Some workouts, if I have a lot of energy, I will try to push it. You know, that's the whole point of this bodybuilding thing, is to do enough to grow. And sometimes you have to find out what that is. And sometimes it isn't, you know, the 6 sets. Sometimes it is feeling a little bit more pain than normal. Sometimes it is pushing past the barriers that you have put yourself in, you know? So yeah, at some point, I mean, the whole goal would be able to work with the volume I do of a 1-day workout. Let's say I do 20 sets a week on one workout. Say I decided to do, you know, a bro split, like just legs one day, chest one day, back one day, and I could do 25 sets for a body part, right? Well, ideally, I'd you know, if I really was adapting and the body was just, you know, the pinnacle, it was like superhuman, it would be able to do 25 sets per day per body part. You know, that would be ideal. Kind of like gaining strength, you know, if I could lift 1,000,000 pounds, that's more than 1,000 pounds. So yes, if I feel good, I do try to push those boundaries a bit safely. I don't try to go too heavy if I feel joint pain or anything, but do I add more sets or do a couple more exercises or experiment around that way? Yes, I do. I do that all the time. So, and I'm in the present moment, I am doing that. Right now I'm doing whole body workouts, but sometimes I'll do 6 or 7 sets for some of my lagging body parts because I want to bring them up and I have to push them into a place where they feel that they are being taxed and challenged, right? So yeah, I change things up all the time. I'm always listening to the body. I'm always experimenting and seeing, you know, what are my limitations? You know, that's really the question. What are your limitations? And your limitations last week would be different than your limitations this week if you've been training, right? Your limitations last year should be different than your limitations now. And sometimes they go backwards because, you know, age and all this other stuff and environmental factors, your stress level, all this kind of stuff. But you're always really trying to push that envelope and find out what are your limitations, right? Jeff Lewis asks, am I native? I get this question a lot. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's, I mean, I got the long hair and everything, but the reason why I have long hair, just so you know, okay? The reason why I have long hair is I have an identical twin brother, and we do look a lot different in a lot of ways, but for people that don't really know us and see us from a distance, it's just really helpful for them to have you know, some way of recognizing us as different. So I've kind of been considerate and just said, screw it. I don't care about using hair gel and all this shit anyway. So I'll just grow my hair out and whatever, right? And actually it's warmer on me. Like out here, when I'm standing here, it's starting to get colder now. And you know, living in Western Canada is not the coldest place in Canada, but it's colder than California. And I find having long hair is just warm, but it's not because I'm some sort of, you know, flower child or something. Like some people misunderstand this stuff, right? And then they see long hair and they say, oh, you must be native. And of course I am native. Yeah, I guess I am. I just found out a few years ago, and that's another long story. But the fact is that, yeah, I get that question a lot. People are like, are you native? You know, I don't know why. people care so much about where the race is or whatever. I guess they need to know whether it's okay to talk to you or not. I don't I have no idea. Yeah. So Champ Puss, who's a bit of a smart ass, you know, some of your comments have been kind of smart alecky, so don't think I haven't noticed that. But he's asking how many sets should he do per muscle group, right? And I always respond the same way. It depends on your frequency, depends on how you feel after your workouts, depends, you know, like when you train a body part and then you finish and then you come back around to that body part again, how do you feel? That's the big question, right? Are you so sore you can't even move? You know, if you're so sore you can't even move, then that means you need to lower your sets, lower your volume, or change the frequency. You know, one of the things. So it's kind of like, you know, that like, well, kind of like a camera. There's ISO, there's shutter speed, and there's aperture, you know? So you need to adjust these three things, and there's no one right way to take a picture. There's just different ways to adjust the settings, and there's three or so variables. So with training, it's the same thing. So on average, I find it's good to kick the shit out of a body part, right? Just kick the crap out of it, and then look at your watch, you know, and find out how long it takes you to recover from that. That's actually not a bad way to do it. I mean, if you really want to kind of do the whole bro split type of science side of things, do that. Kick the crap out of the body part, put as much energy into it as you can so it just feels like it's limp, like there's nothing left in it, right? And then when there's nothing left in it, then find out how long it takes you to recover. Maybe it's only a day, maybe it's only 2 days, and then you got to do that again, you know? So that's one way to set yourself up for a training program, is to just push the muscle as far as you can into failure and exhaustion, and then, you know, train around that. Now, the other way to do it is to just train a certain amount of volume, like 3 or 4 sets or 6 sets, and then say, okay, how long does it take for me to recover from that? And then I will stick to that type of frequency, right? So this is the way you can address this, right? But it's really up to you. There's no right or wrong, but I find on average 6 to 8 sets is what it takes to really kill a muscle of hard, intense work. So one guy named Justin Earnshaw asked, how do I get so big eating so little? The thing is, it isn't about calories. You know, everybody is obsessed with calories, but calories are a measurement of energy, but they're not necessarily showing you the whole picture, okay? It's an oversimplified way of nutrition. But what I found is that my body never needed like 1,000,000 calories, and I find that if I eat 1,000,000 calories through, like, say, chocolate and chips and Doritos and pizza and all this kind of stuff, all I do is put on body fat, feel sluggish, and my muscles actually get starved. So I was one of the guys that used to gain weight for a bodybuilding show in a lot of cases, because I would cut out all that crap type food, even though I was eating way more calories, and I would actually end up putting on muscle mass when I got ready for a show, because the muscles were starved for protein, okay? And so when I started to stabilize the blood sugar, all the body starts to actually get more efficient at absorbing nutrients and also utilizing the food properly to, you know, build muscle, right? So a lot of people get obsessed with this whole calorie thing. I find that calories are not telling you even close to the whole picture. I find that make sure that your macros, like your protein, is sufficient. Make sure that your carbohydrates or your fats, depending on how you eat and what feels right to you and your blood type and all this kind of stuff, make sure that your fats are sufficient to give you enough energy to train, but really what you want to do is make protein your priority. So what I'm doing is 150, 160 grams of protein a day right now, right? Through natural foods. I'm not doing it through whey protein, okay, which isn't as good as real food, okay? Real food's much better. And then I will have higher calorie days. So for instance, I went out for my birthday the other night and I had pizza and had a bunch of crap and whatever and cake and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm doing is I'm on average trying to make sure I get in about 500 or so, although I don't even count the calories. I'm just guessing this is what's happening. I'm getting in a little bit less calorie requirement through energy every day, so that way my body is forced to go into the fat stores. Now, if you do this too fast, you'll know, okay? You'll know from a couple symptoms. If you start cutting weight too quickly, you will notice that your strength just plummets, right? When you go in the gym, you can't get any sort of pump whatsoever, and your strength is just plummeting right through the ground. Second of all, you'll notice that you almost have dead legs. You know, when you get up and walk around, like you just got no nutrition in the legs, like there's just no power, no push to them, right? Another symptom is you're perpetually always really flat, okay? Now, what I do is that I watch my body and I touch those areas all the time. And a lot of good bodybuilders do this. They basically flatten themselves out on purpose and go there and find out exactly where that limit is. And they go back and forth with their nutrition through carbs or fat, whatever it is, and they up and lower it, up and lower it, up and lower it to find that sweet spot, okay? Where they seem to be maintaining their muscle, but still skimming off fat, because you don't want to do it too fast, because if you skim off fat too fast, you're going to be taking boatloads of muscle with you, right? So that's kind of how I find my sweet spot. So some days my calories will be higher, some days they will be lower, but ultimately I try to keep the protein high and eat as much protein as I can, and then just eat some energy calories here and there as I feel my way through this. You know, I start to feel flat, I start to feel like really drained or something. Okay, good, I need a little bit more calories. If I start to look like I'm really flattened out, like the skin is really loose and I feel like my muscles just can't get a pump, I know I need a little bit of carbs, because a little bit of carbs are actually protein sparing. A little bit of carbs will actually help you keep from losing muscle tissue while you lose fat, okay? And also carbs will help excite the metabolism. You know, it's almost like throwing fire, you know, a coal in a fire. It just whoosh, you know, it just starts to go. So you want that metabolism to be stoked as well. So that's why I eat the carbs here and there too, is because you want to make sure the body knows that it does have the nutrition when it needs it, but it's not taking in too many calories, so your body doesn't feel the need to store anything either, right? So Picker Dinner asked me if squats are superior to other leg exercises. And I would say, actually, I would say no and yes. It just depends on the person. One person can squat and they notice their legs are definitely the weak link. Another person can squat and they know their lower back is definitely the weak link. You know, the lower back is what fatigues before everything else, or the knees or something. So depending on what your weak link is, depending on how you're built, will depend on whether squat is the best exercise for you or not. Now, the nice part about squat is that I find it can put a lot of weight on your spine, and that could be a bad thing and a good thing. On the good side of things, it causes a overall body and systemic adaptation in the body. It says your body as a whole needs to be stronger, and then it starts to secrete hormones. Based on that, it starts to do a whole bunch of things to say, hey, I got to get stronger, right? So on a negative side of things, the injury risk does go up. So you have to be careful and, you know, work within your own limitations on that, right? So if you're going to just build legs though, I find walking lunges, one-legged squats, and one-legged squats on a Smith machine to be absolutely totally effective. So if somebody didn't or couldn't squat, okay, I think you could still build big legs with one-legged movements like that. Step ups as well, and any sort of movement that keeps the tension on the leg and stretches it out, but doesn't keep the stress on the lower back. So for people that have really bad lower back injuries, but not so bad that they can still do one-legged movements without problems with their back, I totally recommend that. Like walking dumbbell lunges. Dumbbells help keep the weight in the lower center of gravity, but your legs continue to be the weak link in the exercise. So yeah, I would say experiment with that. If you really don't want to do squats, or you just can't, then that's your alternative. I recommend everybody do squats, regardless of what the range of motion is, depending on, you know, what's right for them. But I think that squats are great, and they're a nice way of mixing things up. That's all, you know. So you want to mix things up. The more variety you have, the more capable you will be to put on muscle mass and to gain in different areas, right? So I don't know if there is such thing as the best exercise. There's just basically the one that works for you right now, that addresses what's the weak link in you at this moment, right? Okay, Cameron D talks about squatting with the Smith machine, and should he do it or not, and is that effective? He says Jay Cutler uses it. I notice a lot of bodybuilders use the Smith machine for legs and things. One of the reasons why is because it's safer, because it's stabilized, you know, laterally. So if you have a little bit of scoliosis going on or something like that, then maybe it's a little bit easier on your back. Second of all, if you fail at any part of the exercise, you can just put the thing right on the rack right away, and then, you know, you're okay. You're not collapsing with the weight on your back, which is always a good thing. The other thing is though, is that it will change the line of force, you know, because, you know, when you squat, you're balancing the weight forward and back. You know, there's a little bit of a movement of the ass back and forward, and let's just say this, you kind of control that line of force depending on how you move. Whereas on a Smith machine, you will have to make sure your feet are appropriately placed to make sure this happens, right? You put them too far forward, you might notice that you're getting a little bit too much knee pain. You put them back a little bit, then you keep the tension on the hamstrings, and therefore your knees are a little bit more protected, but then you're bending over a little bit more. So you need to find that sweet spot. But is Smith machine effective? I would say there's no reason why it couldn't be. And in some cases, some people could argue that it's more effective for building legs if it does take out a little bit of that lower back stimulus in the whole thing. So basically your lower back isn't the one failing before your legs do, right? Find out what that is, you know, find out if that's true or not for you. If you do Smith machine squats and you don't feel any pain in the knees, and you feel that it is the right thing, and you feel that your legs are actually, the burn and the failure in the legs is happening long before the lower back, I would say, yeah, that would probably be a really powerful exercise for you to gain muscle mass, and it probably could be more effective than free weight squats for you. Although free weight squats might serve another purpose for you in some way, you know, such as movement patterns and coordination, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Smith machine is definitely a valid way of squatting. I never really used the Smith machine. I just never really felt comfortable on it, except for one-legged squats, but I never really wanted to do legs on there for squats. I just always felt like it was counterproductive. And the gym that I'm in right now, they have a horrible Smith machine. It's just the shittiest Smith machine ever. There's so much tension on the going on the way up, and then it doesn't have the eccentric portion because there's just too much friction in the machine itself. So I find you're fighting the machine in my gym. But if I had a good Smith machine in my gym, I would be using it for sure. Okay, a guy named Shoot 'em Up is asking, do I take a pre-workout or do I just drink coffee for my workouts? I never use pre-workouts because I don't like the chemical caffeine shit. I don't like these artificial type things that a lot of these companies are putting in their stuff. Drinking coffee, I actually just like to flavor it. I don't drink it because of caffeine. I actually drink it because I like the flavor. But ultimately, if I'm going to drink a pre-workout, I will have branched chain amino acids. I find they are very effective for increasing your energy for the gym, and also keeping you from hitting that crash, like that blood sugar crash. If say you are eating a little bit less than normal or whatever, and you want to make sure that you're not losing muscle mass during your workout, I find branched chain amino acids are pretty good. And I try to use one that's sweetened with stevia, not with sucralose or any of that aspartame shit. So yeah, that's basically what I use sometimes. Okay, Sean M. Pavlik is asking, he says he squats lots of reps, and he goes in the gym and does legs, squats lots of reps, and he says he's sore as hell the next day, and he's asking, will this ever subside? And I will say, yeah, it does subside. It does take time for your body to adapt and actually start to establish this as normal behavior for your body and your survival patterns. But in time, especially if your eating is in check, okay, and you're making sure that you're eating enough protein and everything so you're recovering, it will subside, but you'll always be a little bit sore. Like I noticed that some areas that got sore before in my life, like the most sore areas, they've always continued to be sore after workouts, just not as sore. Like before, hamstrings used to kill me. Like after a workout, hamstrings used to just kill me. Now, when I do stiff-legged deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts and I leave the gym, the next day they feel kind of tight, nice, but I don't get that absolute dead, like dying feeling from them. So yeah, it does subside. It does subside a bit, but not anytime soon probably. Jordan's asking me if I believe that stretching a muscle can cause it to grow. And I would say stretching under tension will cause a muscle to grow, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why, when I tell you about range of motion, I'm saying stretch the muscle, just not the joint. Yeah, that's the thing that actually helps tear the muscle apart. The problem is if you tear too much, then you'll actually tear the joint apart. Now, I think Jordan's actually talking about just stretching without weight. And I would say there is a possibility that could cause a muscle to grow a little bit. The reason why is because it's going to increase and help with blood flow. And anytime you increase blood flow and nutrient absorption in the area, plus you stretch a muscle, you're actually stretching it and pulling it apart a little bit, it will adapt in a certain way, and that could lead to some sort of muscle mass. Although I'm sure that just flexibility is not the only way. Otherwise, Bruce Lee would have had like 35-inch legs, you know what I'm saying? So, and yogas, you see people in yoga and yogis and stuff, their legs and their back would just be huge, from stretching and downward dog and all this. But they're not, well, there's a reason for that. Stretching is not enough, obviously, right? But it's a great tool for recovery. So Jim Dano, again, he's asking about his knees. His knees are bad from rugby, playing rugby and everything. And he finds when he trains legs, he just gets really sore and stuff. And is there anything he can do? Now, there's a few things you can do, Jim. One of the things is you can start taking glucosamine sulfate, which is a supplement that is one of the nutrients that's found in your ligaments and cartilage tissue and in your joints, okay? So glucosamine is basically glucose, sugar, combined with amine, which is protein, okay? Now, as you get older, your body's ability, supposedly, your body's ability to produce this out of your own protein and sugar goes down. So they have noticed that guys that are middle-aged or older will really get a benefit and an anti-inflammatory natural effect from taking this supplement, and also it will help rebuild your joints and tissue and help deal with that. MSM is another supplement as well that can help with that, and fish oils, salmon oils and stuff can actually help lubricate and help get into the joints and help you actually establish some sort of lubrication in there, so that way you're not inflaming up so fast. The other thing to actually do is to go to massage therapy. I always recommend this, or a good qualified naturopath, and see if there are muscles that are not functioning properly in your knees and in your ankles and in your calves, because what will happen is if your ankles aren't moving properly, or if your muscles around your knee aren't moving properly, or if they're too tight, they can actually block circulation off and then keep you from removing inflammation in that area and recuperating. So you might be going to the gym and working out, but if there's no blood flow going to that area, that joint will not recuperate, and therefore you will experience the sensations that you're experiencing now. So I would also recommend that you get that checked out and see, because it's amazing to me how many times in my life that I've had just one small trigger point or muscle knot and it was mimicking a massive injury. All right, I thought, oh my God, I have a massive injury. Meanwhile, I go for massage therapy and all of a sudden, boom, the thing that was causing me so much pain instantaneously gone, right? I had this tearing feeling down the side of my leg before the 1996 natural bodybuilding show I won, the first one I ever went in. And it was so bad I couldn't leg press, couldn't squat, couldn't do anything for legs for 3 weeks before the show. And I thought, hey, I must have torn something, something's going on. Well, sure enough, it just happened to be some trigger points in my upper back that were radiating down to lower back, then radiating to the hip, then radiating down the side of the leg and causing this tearing sensation. And that is a common trigger point pattern. So inflammation can also be caused in this way. If muscles are not doing their job, not stabilizing the joint when they're supposed to, your joint will be taking more mileage and actually taking a bit of a beating. All right, so I hope this helps. Yeah, so check that out. Okay, so Flash Errol's asking for hard gainers. Any advice for hard gainers? Okay, so I knew a few hard gainers in high school, and I was kind of one of them, but not total. Like, I wasn't a real skinny guy, but I was, you know, on the skinnier side in some ways. But I had some genetics as well, right? But I wasn't a big guy naturally. You know, I was 105 pounds in grade 9, right? 14 years old, so I wasn't a naturally big kid. But what I could say is that for hard gainers, you have to make sure that you eat enough. You always have to be like hooked up to that dinner constantly, because your body will have a tendency to be more catabolic than, say, a fatter type of guy, right? Like a mesomorph or endomorph, you know? A guy that basically is sitting around and he can eat every 3 or 4 hours and it just sustains him and he's fine. For an ectomorph, you have to be eating constantly. And I'd suggest supplements like glutamine and branched chains may help you. Protein shakes may help you, because this will help you constantly be feeding your muscle tissue protein and what it needs in order to be able to recover. But the other thing is you want to make sure you have enough sleep, and also you want to manage your activity, okay? So if you're doing extreme cardio, like, you know, I know on the internet there's a lot of bullshit going on right now that they say, oh, you could be a marathon fucking runner and then a powerlifter at the same time. It's like, no, you can't. You cannot do that. So you're burning a lot of calories already if you're a hard gainer. So the last thing you want to be doing is doing 4 hours of cardio, doing something, you know, playing sports or whatever, and then weight training and thinking that you're going to actually get results. Because what's happening is that you're like, you're burning your calories away so freaking fast that your body can't keep up. So you want to manage your calories, you want to spend them wisely, and therefore you spend them on weight training. Like when I was doing karate when I was 18 years old and I was a karate instructor and all this, I did not gain any muscle when I was karate training and bodybuilding training. All I did was maintain and then lose, you know, about half my strength on the bench and all this, right? Because I was just burning up so many calories. So I would do experiments where I would just do karate for a period of time, just do weight training for a period of time and see what happens. And when I quit karate and just did weight training, my body just ballooned. I just put on weight. So you have to realize that the type of stimulus you're giving your body will dictate how it adapts. So if you're a really active person, you only sleep 4 hours a night, you're running around all day doing a construction job, all this kind of stuff, you're gonna have to make sure you really eat more calories to compensate for that. And you might not be able to get away with just eating protein and carbs. Maybe you need to eat a lot of fat. Maybe you need to eat a ton of food all over the place, and then make sure you have a baseline of at least 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein, if not more. You know, the thing is with hard gainers is that you got to eat way more food than, say, a guy that is not as much of a hard gainer, because your metabolism's burning that stuff up. So that's the best way I can say that you should address this with your nutrition. Now, on a training side of things, I find hard gainers are people that really, really thrive on frequency in a lot of cases. When they train all the time, like, you know, body parts, you know, 2, 3, 4 days a week, more frequently, they seem to gain bigger benefit, because it's almost like their body has a short-term memory, but it doesn't have a long-term memory. It's like, it's almost like when they train really hard and then go back to their normal lifestyle, the body just goes back to just losing the body weight and losing the body, the lean body mass, and then basically starts to become skinny again. So I find reminding the body all the time is really important for hard gainers. If a person is naturally an endomorph, like a fatter person that just, you know, they do a workout and they're still sore five days later, those types of people seem to do okay with volume but less frequency, because their body seems to hold on to that memory of that type of stimulus for longer, okay? So yeah, that's something you can try. Just experiment with higher frequency and eating a ton of food. Like, I mean, you got to be eating 7-8 meals a day as a hard gainer, because that's just what it is. Now, the blessing of this is that you're going to naturally be a leaner bodybuilder. You're naturally going to be in shape with less effort all the time. So there is an advantage to this as well. So don't look at it as a bad thing, right? So D Mason is asking, do you need to increase protein intake when you increase in muscle mass? And that would be a resounding yes. That's why you see guys like Phil Heath and these guys eating like 4 or 5 pounds of meat a day and all this. Yeah, you need to maintain it because you have more babies to feed, right? You know, little pec and biceps. You got more muscle fibers to feed and more damage to repair when you train, because you're lifting more weight and you're doing more reps and breaking down more tissue. So yeah, your intake of protein does need to increase. And yeah, the same rule applies, about 1 gram per pound of lean mass, if not a little bit more, depending on how your body responds or what your metabolism's like, right? So Champ Puss is asking if I drink alcohol, and I'd say a resounding no. I don't drink any alcohol at all. I find it's just stupid. It feels dirty in my energetic system, and I can really explain this in really complicated terms from meditation language. But yeah, alcohol it's direct poison to muscle in a lot of cases. There are some people that can thrive no matter what you give them. You can give them crack cocaine and they still have muscle, you know what I'm saying? So but for me, what I've noticed with my body, any alcohol whatsoever is not good for it. It just it fights that. It's a direct poison. That's why your liver enzymes go up when you drink alcohol. And it's just not one of those things that I recommend if somebody wants to be a bodybuilder, especially, among other things. But anyway, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. He's also saying that steak is expensive in the UK. You know, what else could he do for protein? And I'm like, yeah, well, you know, the day of diet that I did, the 1 day of eating, I did this as a typical day, but it's not like every day is the same. You know, I do change things up from time to time, right? But I find it's funny, like, this is why I probably avoided doing a day of eating, because people have a tendency to snapshot something and then say, oh, okay, this is all you do forever. It's like, no, that was 1 day. But yeah, I'll eat egg whites some days. Some days I'll eat turkey. Some days I'll eat fish, you know, or more fish, or salmon instead of tuna and all this. So yeah, there are different protein sources. So anything that's a lean protein source, especially when it's coming from meat, I find it's most effective. And what I've found, you know, I know there are some people out there that find other protein sources that are effective. Okay, so go nuts with that. But if you're asking my opinion and what has worked for me, that's what I do. Okay, so yeah, so go nuts with tuna, salmon, codfish. I don't care what it is, lobster, crab, oysters. You know, but lower fat alternatives are usually better. And yeah, just stick to that. So Eoin, or E-O-I-N, okay, and I can't pronounce his last name. He goes, do you ever worry about eating animal foods? There's a lot of saturated fat in them. What's your opinion on vegan bodybuilding? You know, this is just a recipe for disaster right here, right? So I can't stand this freaking debate right now on the internet. It's the same thing with the squatting, you know, like you got to squat ass to the floor, otherwise it's you know, you're a shithead or something. The bottom line is that I don't worry about eating animal foods. Animal foods are actually natural, but are you eating foods that are eating natural foods, right? So that's why I say grass-fed is better than eating corn or GMO corn. That's why I'll eat steak like that. Game meat is much better. If you ever have moose meat or deer meat, 10 times better than like cow meat. Okay, you notice like you feel different when you eat that stuff. And the percentage of saturated fat is significantly lower in relationship to the omega-3s and all this kind of stuff, because they're eating all these different natural foods and stuff. Vegan bodybuilding, you know what, if it works for you, go nuts. But for me, I know 100% it wouldn't work, and it wouldn't help my health one bit. I know I do not feel good on starches, carbs, and fats. If I ate the typical beans and rice type diet, I'd feel like shit all the time. And I know this because, you know, when I eat that stuff, I don't feel very good. So I'm going on what works for me and what I've seen work for other people. But, you know, try it out if you want. So John Camp has given me like a book here. So thanks, John. Writing a book on everything, so it's pretty hard to find the question in here. So if you guys can make your questions like, you know, about a sentence or so long, so it's easier for me to read in front of the camera, that'd be better. But John's asking about, he's saying, Jason, you tend to train with higher rep ranges, you know, and he's saying that a lot of the websites he's talking or looking at, they say this is endurance training, you know, when you're training 15 reps, 20 reps, 10 reps. And he's saying, you know, you need to do progressive overload, or at least that's what he's read, you know, in order to gain muscle. And I'm saying, yeah, but what I'm doing is not endurance. Let's just put it this way. Like if I run from here to that goal post over there, you know, takes me 20, 30 seconds, you know, but does that mean that that's endurance? Right? Endurance is dictated by what energy source you are using. Okay. So the energy source is basically dictating it. So if I'm into glycogen and fat fatty acid globalization, which means that I'm using fat and glycogen for my energy source instead of creatine or ATP, that means I'm in endurance. So any set that is less than 2 minutes is using creatine phosphate and ATP. ATP is done in about a second or two, and then you use creatine phosphate in the majority for the first 2 minutes of a set. So that said, that is not technically endurance. It might be muscular endurance as far as strength endurance, right? But it's not actual endurance. Now, one thing I found was that when I went heavy all the time, I actually got weaker and more injured and broken. So this is the thing. Let me just pick this up. If I fold this leaf a certain amount, you know, it's okay. It's enough to create an effect. I'm creating an effect. This leaf is folded, okay? But if I fold it too much, I might snap it, you know, especially if it's brittle. So your goal as a bodybuilder is to find out how much do you need to bend something? How much do you need to lift in order to elicit a result? So if you lift in the 5 rep range, that might be enough to break apart muscle fibers and put on muscle. And I think that you need to do something like that from time to time. But what I found is once the fibers are broken apart, I don't need to continue to break them apart over and over and over again in the same rep ranges. I found that doing high rep days, synergistically, you know, high rep days with those low rep days gives me an overall better result, because the high rep days help me recover from the low rep days. Okay, so I'll do, you know, 315 on the bench for a set of 4, 5, 6, you know, 8, depending on, you know, what kind of body fat level I have at the time. And then I will do a rep day of 275 for 16 reps or something, or I'll do 225 for sets of 30, and that will help pump blood in there and nourish the area with protein and carbs and all this kind of stuff and vitamins and whatever. And then when I come back to a heavy day, I get stronger. Now, the reason why I started doing this was because back in the day, I used to think, like a lot of people on the internet think, oh, progressive overload, I gotta get stronger every workout, otherwise I should kill myself. You know, it's like, it's so important, right? So what I would do is go in there and always try to, you know, max out and get better than last time. You know, if I could get 4 reps with a certain weight, then I better, you know, go up by 5 pounds the next week. But, you know, at some point my body plateaued. It just wasn't going anymore. And what would happen, I started to go backwards. And I was like, geez, you know, I'm doing 4 reps with a certain weight, and now I'm only getting 3 reps with it. What the hell's going on? Well, sure enough, I was just overtraining that one groove, that one pattern, that one channel. I was overtraining it. Okay, and what I did was then I backed off on the weight, and then when I came back to that larger weight again, right, the next workout, I was actually stronger. So I noticed just from experimentation that sometimes high reps and low reps combined make me stronger overall and less injured, actually. Because if you keep on pushing against a wall, it's like a bird banging into a window, you'll just basically inflame up the area, and you're not going to actually get anywhere. Your body's actually already telling you, it's saying, hey, listen, you know, you've already done this. You don't need to keep doing this. I'm already trying my best to adapt to it. Now try something else, you know, do something to assist me with this recovery. You see what I'm saying? So I found that a combination of reps seems to work the best for injury prevention and recuperation, and for overall strength. So that's why I did it. It wasn't because of some sort of bodybuilder retirement home type of thinking. It was just, this is what works, right? Bimal or Abimal Stinson, he's asking what's on my thumb. I smashed my thumb in the dumbbell rack about a month ago, and I smashed it really good. Like, it was purple within about 10 seconds, okay? It was like this. Within 10 seconds, it was like this. And so now it's just continually just kind of sitting there as some sort of painted nail wannabe type idea. But anyway, yeah, it's purple. It's just, it doesn't hurt anymore. But yeah, it's still there. It's still there. I think it'll be there for another month or two, I think. Maybe longer, I don't know. Okay, Shoot 'em Up's asking me if I take supplements. So basically, I don't really take much supplements because I find a lot of them make me retain water, and I can't really tell how my diet is affecting me when I'm taking a supplement and I'm retaining water. Like even branched chain, sometimes I retain a little bit of water, and I notice that I lose a little bit of cuts and stuff, and I don't really like that because I'm trying to find out, you know, what diet on a day-to-day basis is affecting me, right? So supplements can be good. I don't use creatine anymore because of that same reason. I just find I get stronger, but I look bloated, and I just don't like the feel of that, right? So I basically just stick to normal food most of the time, and I will have branched chains for a workout here and there, or maybe I'll have a protein bar once in a while. And whey protein, I find in a lot of cases sits like a rock in my stomach, which can be a good thing when I'm on a really low carb, low energy food type diet. So I will drink the whey at that point. But lots of times I stay away from the whey because it just kills my appetite. So sometimes it just sits there, you know, and just boils around, right? But whey is great to have with you if you are in a bind and you just can't get access to food, you know? So that's why I think whey protein is great. It's just convenient protein on the go. So I would never say that whey is bad. I think whey is great, and I do drink it from time to time, and I have done a video on supplements that I use. So you just look that up. Just click on the little magnifying glass and go supplements that I use, and then you'll find that video on this channel, okay? So I think that's good for today. That's the Friday Q&A with Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and thanks a lot for tuning in, and make sure you put your questions down below if you want me to answer them. I will see you next Friday, but I'll also see you tomorrow. I'm going to be putting up another video, and I'm trying to do one every day, if not every second day. So if I don't put up a video that day, know that another one will be coming up the next day, so keep checking in. And thanks a lot for watching, and share my stuff if you like it, and take care for now.